Hi everyone, and welcome to this new tutorial on my channel. Today we're going to talk about Stripe and React Native. So far it's been quite difficult to implement a Stripe payment solution in a React Native app, mainly because there is no official React Native library supported by Stripe. There is an existing library called Tipsy, but it's not maintained anymore and not recommended by Stripe as it's not an official library. So what we're going to implement today is a React Native app with a native module system, a bridging system, so that we can communicate with the official iOS Stripe SDK. In addition, we will also need a Node.js backend because we need Stripe to generate what is called payment intent and a client secret on the backend. First thing first, we need to create your Stripe account. So if you don't have already one, just go and create yours. And in Stripe, you can have a list of projects and you can create as many projects as you want. And here I created one that is called Stripe RN for our React Native project. Then if you go to the developers and API keys section, you have here two keys, the publishable key and the secret key that we really need. We need both of them to make the project work. So first go there and be sure that you save these two keys somewhere, or at least just keep your tab open. So we are going in this example to create a completely new project, a React Native project, by using the npx command. Of course, you don't have to. If you already have a React Native project, that's fine. You can just continue from the next step. So far, let's just start from the beginning so that we have something we can rely on. Now that the project is created, here, the creation of the project finished, we are going to install the iOS Stripe SDK. For that, just move to your Stripe RN directory where we just have our new React Native project, and let's open the project. To install the Stripe SDK, we have to go to the iOS folder, and in the pod file, at the end of the pod file, we are going to add this line, pod, and then between quotes, Stripe. This is how we are going to install the Stripe SDK. We go back to our command line in the iOS folder, and we just run pod install, where the command is going here to install Stripe, and we also see that it's installing 17.0.2, the version of the SDK that is being installed. We are now going to instantiate Stripe, and for that we need the keys that I just mentioned earlier, the publishable key that we are going to use in our code. So we will first open the Stripe RN, so that's the name of our project, XC workspace. Not the Xcode project, but the XC workspace project. This one contains the different pods that have been installed. So here we have the list of the pods that have been installed, and we have the main project Stripe RN. So we are going to edit the app-delegate.m file first. So we will import Stripe with this command, and the instantiation is as simple as adding the Stripe set default publishable key with your publishable key just before the return yes statement of the did finish launching with options function. And here, of course, you just need to change the publishable key to the one you can grab from your Stripe dashboard. As of now, we instantiated Stripe for our project. The next thing is in the app.delegate.h to add an instance to declare the root view controller. So this is a bit tricky in the sense that you probably don't need this. This part is really only for people that are going to use the 3D secure system. The 3D secure system is an additional security that has been implemented recently from the banks, and in several countries in Europe, you have an additional step where you need to connect to your bank account to approve the final payment. And for that, we need our app to communicate with the main thread so that we can switch between the React Native views and the main views. Once you declared the root view in the header file, you also need to add the self.rootView equals rootView command here just before the instantiation of Stripe. And that's it for the instantiation of Stripe, so we are now good. The next part is to create a new view controller. So if we were going to use a native app, we will put everything in our view controller where we can grab the credit card numbers and all the personal information to accept the payment. But now in our case, we're just going to create an empty view controller just as a placeholder. Our UI will be completely made in React Native. So in Xcode, just create a new M file and call it checkout view controller. Press enter, finish. And I'm just going to edit its content because I already created the file before, but don't worry, all the code will be available in a GitHub repository, so you will be able to easily copy paste all that code that I'm just writing right now. In addition to the M file, we also need the header file with the same name, checkout view controller. And basically, it's really a simple UI view controller, as you can see here from the header and the M file that only have this authentication present view controller function. So there is one last part required for the native part, but we are going to take care of that later on. It's the complete bridge, the native module to communicate with the iOS Stripe SDK. First, we are going to implement our view in React Native to accept card payment. So this is a view that I've already implemented. So I'm just going to go to the app.js and completely change its content. As I mentioned earlier, the code will be available in a GitHub repo. Just by simply copy pasting the code, you will have all you need. So now we are going to start our project. We go to our command line and run React Native start. At the same time, we will run our app in the simulator from Xcode. So we just run the app by pressing run from Xcode, and now the simulator started, and we should now see our interface that we just created to grab the credit card information. Ta-da! So we have a simple view here where we can enter a username, a card number, month and year, and finally the CVC. So if we go check our app.js file, everything is implemented here in the render function. We have different text inputs for the different values, and everything is saved in a state with name, year, card number, month, and CVC, and updated with the functions already present here. We have a button, a pay button here, and by pressing on the pay button, we will launch the pay function implemented here. So the pay function will first go and connect to a backend that we still need to implement. By connecting to the backend, and it's going to be a simple REST API, we are going to create a payment intent that will return a client secret. And the client secret is an essential information we need for the Stripe SDK to work. So now let's go back to the command line and create our Node.js backend. For the Node.js backend, I am going to refer to one of my previous posts, a blog post that I wrote earlier. If you go to adamcan.net/blog, there is an article entitled Creating a Simple Backend with Express.js. So I'm just going to copy paste exactly whatever I did there because that's quite enough to create our backend for the Stripe payment. So let's call it Stripe backend and yarn init. I'm going to install the different packages I mentioned here: Express Course, Body Parser, and Morgan. So just press enter for all the questions. So now it created the package.json, and with yarn add Express, Morgan, Course, and Body Parser. The next step is to create the index.js file, and we are going to open this project in our editor. So the index.js file is empty, and I will just copy paste the content that I created earlier here that you can find on the blog post. Just paste it here. This is a really simple backend that is going to run on port 3001, and it should show hello world if we just access the API. So we just run node index.js, and if we go to 3001, it returns hello world. And here you can see that the get function returned 200. So it returned okay. We need one additional endpoint. It could be a get or a post endpoint that is going to create a Stripe payment intent. But first we need to install the Stripe package. And then this is the simple function that we need to create a payment intent. So again, I just copy pasted from the existing code. So the code will be in a GitHub repository. You can see in the description of the video. So I called the endpoint create Stripe payment intent, where we initiate here the Stripe object, and we need to define the secret key. So just create a variable called Stripe SDK, and you have to change its value to, you go to your dashboard, reveal test key. So no worries here, it's just test data. I know you're not supposed to share your secret key, but for this project it's fine. It's just a dummy project I created just for this tutorial. Oops. So here it is. We have our secret key, and we use the Stripe object to create a new payment intent. We need two information here: the amount and the currency. So it's always recommended to create, to define the amount in the back end, so that you can avoid any bugs or any issues where the user could play with this amount and change the amount themselves. So by defining the amount on the server side, on the backend, it's a more secure way. And then it will create a payment intent and return a client secret. So if we go back to our React Native code here, we are fetching, connecting to the local host, the backend that we just created, the create Stripe payment intent API, and we get a response JSON, and we obtain here the setup intent ID that is returned here by our backend. Once we obtained the client secret, we are going to send this information, the setup intent ID here, plus the credit card information to the Stripe bridge. We haven't created yet the Stripe bridge, but as mentioned here, the Stripe bridge is going to be a native modules, and that's where all the magic will happen. So let's go back to our Xcode project and create two new files. And we will call them just StripeBridge. So here, StripeBridge.m. So I will just copy paste the code from the GitHub repo again with some explanation, but just let's create the header file as well, StripeBridge.h, and here is for the header file. Okay, so it's a bridge module, we have the name of the bridge that we can call, and we have a function that we called create payment. It takes a list of parameters here, the client secret that we obtained from the backend, the credit card number, month, year, CVC. And here there are a list of objects that we are going to use, and you can access all of them on the documentation on Stripe. In the example using iOS, it's quite well explained. We need card information to create a payment method card. We need payment method. So here is where we grab all the card information and create a payment method. And finally, we also need the checkout view controller that we created earlier. And this checkout view controller is important if we are going to use the 3D secure system. In the end, we call a confirm payment function, and we get a status back. Depending on the status, you can edit everything you want here, but I decided to return success if it worked, cancel if the user just canceled, and error if something happened. And if we go back to our code here, we see that we are connecting to the native module StripeBridge, calling the create payment function here with a list of parameters, the client secret, credit card number, month, year, CVC. And then we get a result back, and if the result is success, we will alert that the payment succeeded. So now, if we just run our project, we should be able to proceed payment completely. There is a list of credit cards available on the Stripe website with different scenarios. So a credit card that is always working, a credit card that will ask for a 3D secure, but let's start with a credit card that is always working. Month, year, and CVC. And by pressing pay, it's going to connect to the Stripe SDK, get the information, and then tell us that the payment succeeded. So if you go to your dashboard now in your Stripe RN project, if you go home, you will see that now the first payment happened. It's $10.99 because that's exactly the amount we mentioned in our backend as USD. You can change that amount and check again and see how it updated. So don't forget to start your backend before running the whole project. And we are now also going to try with a card that requires authentication. So we are going to refresh, give a name here, and use the example that is mentioned here as a 3D secure. So now by pressing pay, it knows that this card requires 3D secure. It opens the view to the bank website. So this is an example with a default view, but in real case, it will go to the bank website where you will need to confirm payment. And by completing authentication, it says that we can close this window, and closing the window, we are back and the payment succeeded. So if we go again back to our dashboard and refresh, we will get the second payment proceeded as well. So here, as you can see. So I hope this tutorial was helpful. I've been quite quick in the explanation, but everything, all the source code will be available in the GitHub repo that you will find in the description of the video. So don't hesitate to connect there. The mobile app and the backend repos will be open source. You can just clone them and start using them. And if you have any specific questions regarding a part of the project or something that you don't understand, don't hesitate to ask in the comments. If you like such kind of content, you can follow me and also hit the like button if you enjoyed the video.